Good day everyone. I'm Raymart S. Reyes and for today's lesson, we will talk about the Earth's atmosphere. So let's proceed. The Earth's atmosphere. So, the Earth is surrounded by a layer of gases called the atmosphere. The atmosphere is very important to life on Earth and does many things to help protect life and help life to survive. In other words, atmosphere is very important and also it is the layer of gases here on Earth, okay, to protect us from the sunlight, okay, from ultraviolet radiation. Next, a big blanket. The atmosphere protects Earth like a big blanket of insulation. It absorbs the heat from the sun and keeps the heat inside the atmosphere, helping the Earth to stay warm, called the greenhouse effect. And later on, we will talk about the greenhouse effect. And it also keeps the overall temperature of the Earth fairly steady, especially between night and day. So we don't get too cold at night and too hot during the day. There is also a portion of the atmosphere called the ozone layer. So ozone layer, okay, is the layer that protects us from the unbalanced temperature or weather, okay? Ozone layer protects us from ultraviolet radiation from the sun. And lastly, the ozone layer protects us from the sun's radiation, just like what I've said earlier. So next. So a big blanket. This big blanket also protects or also helps to form our weather patterns and climate. The weather keeps too much hot air from forming in one place and causes storms and rainfall. All of these things are important to life and the Earth's ecology. So next. The greenhouse effect. Some sunlight that hits Earth is reflected back into space, while the rest becomes heat. And also, greenhouse gases prevent heat from escaping into space, warming the planet. So when we say greenhouse effect, it is the tool, okay, that protects us from the sunlight, okay? We call this the ultraviolet radiation, okay? It helps us to stay warm the planet, and also it protects us from this harmful radiation. And next is the air. So the atmosphere is the air that plants and animals breathe to survive. The atmosphere is made up of mostly nitrogen with 78% and oxygen 21%. There are lots of other gases that are part of the atmosphere, but in much smaller amounts. These include argon, carbon dioxide, neon, helium, hydrogen, and more. So oxygen is needed by animals to breathe. Tama naman, di ba? Pati rin tayo, humans, kailangan din natin ng oxygen para makahinga tayo, para makasurvive. And carbon dioxide ay beneficial naman ito from the plants, okay? Para makapag form sila or makapag-release sila ng oxygen. And also, kailangan din ng mga plant yung tinatawag natin na photosynthesis na nanggagaling sa sun. So, the more na mas malakas ang greenhouse effect, so mas magiging balance ang temperature dito sa planet Earth. And mas magiging maganda ang forms of life dito sa planet Earth. So next. Next is the Earth's atmosphere or the layers of Earth's atmosphere. The Earth's atmosphere is divided up into 5 layers. These are the exosphere, thermosphere, mesosphere, stratosphere, and troposphere. And let's talk about the exosphere. So, let's go. So, let's proceed to the exosphere. When we say exosphere, this is the last and thinnest layer of the Earth's atmosphere. It goes all the way to 10,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface. And also, the function of exosphere is absorbing some of the most harmful radiation from the sun. So next layer is the thermosphere. Thermosphere is next and the air is very thin here. Temperature can get extremely hot in the thermosphere. So Na-mention nga dito, here in a thermosphere, in this layer is the most extremely hot layer in the Earth's atmosphere. And also, it protects the Earth and making complete exploration of the space and making space communication possible. So, dito pumapasok yung mga satellite, ganyan, para makapagbigay ng signal sa Earth kung ano ba yung kaganapan in the outer space. Next is the mesosphere. So, the mesosphere covers the next 50 miles beyond the stratosphere. This is where most meteors burn up upon entry. So, before the asteroids or meteors enters the Earth's surface, so masusunog siya because of the mesosphere. It protects us from those asteroids or meteors. And the coldest place on Earth is at the top of the mesosphere. So, pinaka-top ng mesosphere and doon mararamdaman yung lamig niya, yung pinakamalamig na layer doon. So, next layer is the stratosphere. So, stratosphere extends for the next 32 miles after the troposphere. Unlike the troposphere, the stratosphere gets its heat by the ozone layer. So, alam naman natin kung ano yung ozone layer, di ba? So, ozone layer, ito yung layer na wherein pinaprotekta niya tayo from the sunlight or the ultraviolet radiation. Ozone layer absorbing radiation from the sun, just like what I have said earlier, di ba? So, as a result, it gets warmer the further away you get from the Earth. Weather balloons go as high as the stratosphere. So, when we say kasi na stratosphere, dito natin na makikita o dito natin na mararamdaman or mapapansin yung ozone layer. And the next layer of Earth atmosphere is the troposphere. So, troposphere is the layer next to the ground or surface of the Earth. It covers around 30,000 to 50,000 feet high. This is where we live and even where planes fly. Around 80% of the mass of atmosphere is in the troposphere. The troposphere is heated by the surface of the Earth. So, pag sinabi kasi natin na troposphere, okay, it provides oxygen that we can breathe. Kasama din yung mga animals dyan. And also, ito yung kinikip niya, yung Earth's temperature and yung level or tinatawag natin livable temperature and allows for weather to occur, 'di ba? Ito yung dito tayo nakatira sa troposphere where ayun nga sinabi dito na where the planes fly. So next slide na. So this is the question. So where does outer space start? So there is no clear definition between the Earth's atmosphere and outer space. There are a few official guidelines. Most are between 50 and 80 miles from the surface of the Earth. So according sa may na-research ko, tinatawag na Kármán line. So, Kármán line is the boundary of the Earth's atmosphere and the outer space. So, according din nga sa illustration na pinakita ko kanina, yung layers of the Earth, so, makikita siya from boundary ng mesosphere and the thermosphere. So, once na nag-execute ka or nag-initiate ka na proceed or lumagpas dun sa mesosphere, so you will not be able to breathe properly. So wala nga, masyado na siya mataas, and also iba na yung temperature dun sa thermosphere na mainit na siya dun. And also wala ng oxygen na malalanghap dun. So next slide. So next topic is the climate. So what is climate? Climate is the average measurement of temperature, wind, humidity, snow, and rain in a place over the course of years. Climate is like the weather but over a long time. So when we say climate, so it occurs for a long period of time. So matagalan siya. Example na ng climate is, for example, dito sa Pilipinas, okay, we have meron tayong tag-ulan tsaka tag-init. So parehas siya ng weather, pero sabi nga kanina, na-mention kanina, it occurs over a long period of time. So, kung ano man yung nararamdaman natin na klima dito sa Pilipinas, ayun lang ang mararamdaman natin. And hindi na magbabago yun. So next, what is the difference between climate and weather? So when we say climate, ayun nga, sabi ko kanina, it takes or occur in a long period of time. And when we say weather, is changes in the atmosphere that occur on a daily basis. Ibig sabihin, daily basis, araw-araw. Okay? Pwede rin, for example, dito sa Pilipinas, okay, ang temperature na or weather natin dito ay 32 degrees Celsius. Pwede rin siya mabago mamayang hapon or mamayang gabi. Pwedeng bumaba or pwedeng mas tumaas pa. The weather we experience today could be completely different than the weather we have tomorrow. Ayun nga kanina, sabi ko nagbabago siya. While the climate kasi matagal. Matagal siya nag-occur, matagal din siyang mabago. For example, sa Pilipinas, dito, ang climate natin, ang nararanasan nating climate is tag-init, di ba? Pero dahil nga sa climate change, nagkakaroon ng climate change dahil nga sa mga pollution na ginagawa natin and other natural disasters and natural pollution, nagkakaroon ng climate change or nagbabago-bago. That's why nagkakaroon ng malalakas na bagyo. And next topic na tayo. So, another information, climate is a pattern of weather that occurs over a long time, such as years and centuries. For example, the climate in an area could be dry in that it rarely rains there. However, on days when it does rain, the weather is rainy for that day. The climate doesn't change, it is still a dry climate. So, ayun nga, for example, sa isang bansa, dry country siya, kahit umulan siya doon ng, sabihin na natin 3 araw, hindi pa rin magbabago kung ano man yung meron sa bansa na yun na dry country siya. So, ganun lang siya ka-clear. Next is the types of climate. So, we have 2 types of climate. These are the desert climate and the rainforest climate. When we say desert climate, a climate in which there is an excess of evaporation over precipitation. It means na bihira lang umuulan dito, bihira lang maging rainy season, magkaroon ng rainy season na complete desert climate siya. Hot, dry, and sunny throughout the year. So, for example, sa isang taon, mga 2 beses or wala pa, di aabot sa 10 beses kung umulan sa desert climate. It's because itong lugar na ito is very dry and hot. So, sa buong taon siya ganun. And next is the rainforest climate. When you say rainforest climate, is the climate in tropical rainforest is constantly warm and moist. Warm siya, may pagka-init siya, pero hindi siya katulad doon sa desert climate na hot siya and dry. Pag sinabi kasi na rainforest, laging umuulan dito and mapuno siya and mas kung kumpara siya in desert climate ay mas maraming naninirahan na mga hayop dito sa rainforest. And also hindi siya ganun malala yung weather niya doon. So, or yung climate niya, rather. So, ganun siya, ganun ang dalawang types ng climate, yung rainforest climate and yung desert climate. So, next. Another information, why is climate important? So, climate can determine a lot of things, but it especially determines what kind of plants and animals can live in an area. For example, polar bears need a cold climate. They would be terribly hot and would die quickly in the desert. When climates start to change, animals and plants become endangered. So, ayun nga, sa panahon ngayon, nagkakaroon ng climate change. So, yung mga animals na hindi nila preferred yung klima na yun, which is yung mga animals na preferred nila ay malalamig, and biglang nagkakaroon ng climate change. So, there's a tendency na maubos sila or mamamatay, ganun. Magkaroon ng endangered, okay? Endangered species sa kanila. Kung magkakaroon ng instant or ng excess climate change. So, ganun napaka-importante ng climate change. So, para maiwasan yon, so we need to plant more trees, we need to less our human activities such as illegal doings like cutting trees, ganun. And also yung paggamit lagi ng motor, ganun, yung sa mga usok. So, or may mga ibang mga pabrika na gumagamit ng mga pollution na nakakasama sa ating atmosphere. So, we need to protect our earth as soon as possible. Pag mahuli ang lahat. So, next. So, next is the climate change. Since na-tackle natin siya, so, didiscuss pa rin natin yan. So, climate change can change over long periods of time. Sometimes, this is just a cycle of the Earth. But sometimes, outside forces can have a big impact on climate. So, humans have had an impact by building large cities and cutting down vegetation in places like the rainforest. This has bad an impact to the local climate. Other major events that can affect the climate include volcano eruptions and changes in the sun. So, ayun nga sa climate change, the more na nagpuputol tayo ng puno, the more na gumagawa tayo ng mga activities na nakaka-apekto sa Earth na pwedeng magkaroon ng malalakas na natural disasters, magkakaroon ng malaking changes. Hindi lang sa atin, kundi sa mga other animals na namumuhay. So, mga ibang animals na endangered, baka maging extinct na sila. So, we need to act immediately and we need to plant more trees para sa gayon is maging healthy ang ating planet Earth. So, next. And lastly, we have the Ice Age. So, over the history of the Earth, there have been times when the Earth's climate has cooled considerably. During these times, the ice cap or the glaciers covering the North Pole has grown to encompass much of the northern hemisphere. So, nagkakaroon ng ice age kapag bumaba ang temperature or yung climate dito sa planet Earth. So, nagkaroon na rin ng ice age noon na na-cover ng ice yung Earth's surface. That's why na ang mga ibang animals na hindi sanay sa sobrang lamig ay nag-extinct na sila. While mga animals no na sanay sila, nabuhay sila pero in this era, wala na sila, extinct na rin sila. Wala na rin nag-form ng life sa mga ibang animals na 'yon. So, for me, hindi na magkakaroon ng ice age ngayon. Kumbaga nagkakaroon na ng sudden changes sa klima natin ngayon. Yung pagiging sobrang mainit na and nagkakaroon ng malalakas na bagyo. So, in Ice Age, okay, di na to pwedeng mangyari pero history na sa sa planet Earth na nangyari. So, ayun lang po ang aking report and I hope that you learned something from me and this is the ending of my report. So, thank you guys for listening and God bless.